Hey, you guys! Thanks for joining us this week. We have Aaron from Payne's Toy Samples. We have the Brick from Brick Something, and we're going to discuss one last training for Ahsoka from Anakin. She's going to play Geppetto, as Hera has some splaining to do, and Jason wants us to take a moment to just listen. All this and more, as we will be talking Tano. Hey, you guys! Woo-hoo! Look, it's Aaron! He's this way, not that way, this way! And down that way!
To the right.
Here's Brick! Brick, it's wonderful to have you again.
Live this time.
Live? Well, at least we think live. It looks live. I'm hoping live.
We have no idea. I guess we will find out.
Anything is possible. But Aaron, you're our new guest this week. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with Star Wars?
Let's see. My first true memory of Star Wars was seeing Empire Strikes Back at a midnight showing. So I would have been 6 roughly at that time. And kind of from there, Star Wars toys, Star Wars everything for a long time. And then, what got me back into collecting as an adult, the first time, mind you, there was lulls, but the first time was Power of the Force 2, and then the re-release of the original trilogy with the updates. Still sad face because, I still have the VHS of the original trilogy, not special editions. That is, very well taken care of. I take it out every once in, 6 months just to watch it. And then, I've been pretty much reading. I was reading every Star Wars book pretty much up until the new Jedi Order. I read a few of those books, but prior to that, it was everything from Timothy Zahn, literally every book I have from that period of, the 90s up through the new Jedi Order one. Star Wars has always kind of been a part of my geekdom, my nerd cred. And then, of course, comic books and toys. Star Wars has always been there. And yeah, that's kind of me with Star Wars. 1980 on, technically. I mean, I don't think I ever saw the original Star Wars until after I saw Empire Strikes Back. So
sure,
it was one of those things because I was 3, 4 when it came out. So
yeah, unfortunately, I'm on the young side, so I think the only one that came out in my lifetime was Return of the Jedi for the original.
Yeah, I'm an old man.
Well, I think right away we should let Nolan, most of all, in the chat there, know that there will be spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah, spoilers. We like those.
Well, you can't really talk about it without doing spoilers for this one because this episode's a little more dense than it looks like at first glance.
It's funny because so much happened, but yet so little happened, and I love it. Yeah. I love that kind of building where it's just all about meaning.
Well, it's good that it's at halfway. We're right past that halfway point, and you can kind of see it picking up a little steam. But you can also kind of see where it's touching on a lot of things. So it was an interesting episode, but I'm enjoying the whole thing so far. I mean, I'm really enjoying it.
Yep. Same here.
We kick off with, the ghost landed at the ancient site looking for Sabine and Ahsoka, and we find Hu Yang holding Sabine's helmet. I didn't know a droid could be so melancholy at that moment as he was.
It's all about
You know,
those eyes. It's the
yeah,
eyes that get you that sadness.
yeah, I think they're setting us up to give us this, it's the lovable, somewhat crusty robot where we really get attached to him, and then they're just going to shoot him or something. We're going to get to that point. It's going to be
No.
look at it. Think at the history. K2SO.
No,
What
yeah.
happens to him?
Yeah.
And then the droid from Solo. I cannot think of Lando's droid's name. Oh dear
L
gosh.
L3.
L3. What happens
Leet.
to her? See, you see the thing. We fall in love with these droids,
It's true.
and then they foreshadow this death when we
It
get them and we love them, and they're like great.
it will be a huge loss
It would be.
to the show, but to the galaxy. Like as we were talking about last time I was here on Talking Tano, that thing's been around. Sorry, that thing. Sorry, Hu Yang. Hu Yang's been around forever. I mean, like he truly is like a living chronicle of
Yeah.
generations upon generations of not
He's a
just the
living
Jedi
Jedi
Order.
holocron,
Yeah, not just the
for
Jedi
lack
Order,
of a
but
better
also
word.
like the Republic, right?
Yeah.
Then from the High Republic to the Republic to the fall of the Republic to the New Republic. Like, um, I was hoping maybe he would have somehow come across Luke and
Uh,
helped him a little bit, but you're right. You might be right.
I just think we're foreshadowing it a little too much because when you start when they start making you fall in love with that, it's coming now. It's kind of been where it's been going forever.
I'm saying that he lives, but only with 60% of his original parts.
Ooh,
A whole 60.
ooh. Yeah, no, he's gonna regenerate into another
Yeah.
Doctor.
It's
Sorry.
right.
Wrong
Yeah.
franchise. Wrong franchise. My bad. My bad. My bad.
He'll become a whole new duck.
They're going to use his computer in the Ahsoka Tano's shuttle. It will now be the brain for it.
Speaking of
Only to
Ahsoka,
come out as
though,
a hollow projection later.
she's still hanging out with Anakin over in the world between worlds.
Yes.
I think this whole conversation that they started in here, you can kind of, it's interesting because of the changes that you see as the conversation gets more and more deep for both of them, as they're you can see he wants to push her to a realization.
Mhm.
Now, whether or not it's the real Anakin or if it's the world between worlds, just the Force itself pushing her, we don't know that yet. 100%.
This is definitely a toy therapy situation where Anakin is absolutely like helping her in her process to reach some important realizations. And I'm so happy to be back, especially for this episode. I reached out to Chris because I was like, yo, do you got a co-host? Because I think it was your last one where I was like, you could tell, right? I was like crazy on the chat. I was like, dude, let's talk about this. Because I'm not trying to be like one of those nerds, like I called it, but I won't say like I called it. I'll say that they gave me what I was hoping for, and I was really excited.
There's so much. There's a lot. Like I said, it's a dense. There's
Mhm.
more dense to it than people think. They seem it's like, oh yeah, we have these foreshadowings of Vader and these other things, but there's something there that wasn't there before that we kind of get out of this. We kind of get a process for her to realize that this isn't who she is,
Mhm.
that she can choose to be something different. And I think that's, it kind of starts with the fight where she doesn't want to fight him. She doesn't want to engage in that.
Mhm.
And he pushes it because he knows he needs to get her to where she needs to go.
Well, and it's not like
And
they haven't had that exact conversation before.
Yeah.
yes, and I
And
also think go for it.
no, go ahead. No,
Or
it,
I was just gonna say, I don't think it's just her. I think there's definitely a bigger meta thing happening on behalf of sort of Star Wars fans, but I also think sort of like the light side the light side or the Jedi, like realizing, coming to terms with, wait, what exactly happened during the fall of the Republic and the fall of the Jedi? Like, what actually was the problem? Like, let's sort of relitigate this so that we can then bridge past the Empire and the fall of the Empire to move us towards where we're heading with, the sequel trilogy and whatnot. There's this sort of notion of like, let's remember what exactly is important about the Jedi, what our mistakes were, and sort of pick up on a key lesson that we're going to need moving forward. And I'll dot that for now until
Sure.
we move forward.
And before we literally revisit those kinds of things, Jason asks his mother to just listen.
This was amazing. I mean, honestly, we're finally getting that qualification that Kanan was there. I mean, I love that they mentioned directly about Kanan Jarrus. It's nice that they put that in there. It's the first time he's been mentioned outside of Rebels, and we kind of get to see Jason as that kid that's aware of the Force, and he's in the Force, and we know that he's going to be Force sensitive. So it's kind of a nod to the old, and kind of let's see what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he gets his mother to listen and she hears it too. So that kind of tells me that maybe there's, it's very much that, because we know Sabine is not quite a Jedi. She's not that person, but we kind of see that maybe the Force is running through everything. So we're getting some connective tissue that's not been present for a very long time. It's kind of been, this is not everybody can do this, but everybody can. And this kind of solidifies that extra part of it as well.
It's interesting that you say that it hasn't been there for a while. I think there's parts of the fandom, or I'm not sure exactly why, but I think there's maybe some kind of like barrier or mental block because I definitely think it's been there. It was especially there in The Last Jedi, and I think it continued to be there as we get to The Rise of Skywalker.
Well, and we have,
But
but if you think
yeah.
about Ben's first statement on the Force, it binds everything, ties everything
Mhm.
together. It's there.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
it's they didn't really. It was kind of always this. This is the Jedi. This is the people that have the special abilities. Not everybody has it. That was that prequel era was very much about that,
Oh, of
right?
course. And th
So
and that I guess that's what I'm saying, but when you say it wasn't there, depends on, so I don't know if you're talking in our reality or in their reality, but in our
no,
reality,
I think
it was very
it was
much there in The Force Awakens, The Rise of the was it? The Last Jedi and The Rise of
Yeah.
last
Skywalker,
Jedi.
in that, like, that was kind of Luke's thing, right? Luke did a lot of, fan checking, I guess, and just reminders of like, whoa, 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 let's step back for a second and remind ourselves what's important, because his lessons to Ray were very much Ben's lessons,
Yeah,
right? No, you're wrong. It's not a power that Jedi use to move things. It is the force that binds us. It's everywhere, and then we see
yeah.
that beautiful, like, so. Anyway, sorry, we digress, but it is true. It's here. It's beautiful because it's like, pause for a moment, mom, listen. There was this real like cool mother son thing. I love the fact that she actually does listen to him,
Hmm.
and I love the fact that there's this very much this natural force sensitive kid who hasn't been trained, but we're seeing him sort of like just develop his connection to the force, right? Really in
Hmm.
a very natural way. And I don't know. But yes, this was a dope moment. And to see them like that, full on end of Empire Strikes Back
Yeah,
from behind,
yeah.
so cool.
Well, it's the complete remythicizing of the Force.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And like I
Can
said,
I
it's
say
been missing. I think people missed that point of what the Force really was.
yes? And I think
Yeah,
it's been
because
missing in the
it was
prequels,
very
100%.
reductive. Well, if you think about the prequels, it was very reductive by saying it's
Mhm.
midi chlorians and somebody. That was a reductive take on it.
But is it possible, whether it was intentional or not, maybe it's like massive adjustments, but I actually think that was kind of the point. Like the Jedi were losing their way. And I
Yeah,
think they were using technology. They were looking at midichlorian counts. They were maybe too concerned about the most powerful. And I think from the beginning of this
yeah,
show, I think it's very much been about that. It's been
yeah,
about, there's a reason why maybe Ahsoka took Sabine on in the first place, even though, according to, again, the living Jedi holocron, who's literally known almost
yeah.
every
Says that she's
Padawan
the worst.
forever.
Yeah, yeah, worst
Yeah,
Padawan ever. Yeah,
and we were talking with when Chris and I were talking, we were remembering how that she wasn't exactly excited to see Grogu, regardless of the fact that he was genuinely one of the most powerful Jedi or most powerful Force sensitives that she had met,
Counted, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So she's onto something. This Ahsoka. She's a
yeah.
wise one. This one.
But to find out how we got here, sometimes we have to look back,
Yes.
maybe to the Clone Wars. And thank you for skipping the tube top. Thank you, Dave. He listened to Real Big Fish. We banned the tube top.
This whole sequence is there's a depth to it because of the realization that one, she began her training in a war,
Mhm.
and Anakin grew up in that war as
Mhm.
a teacher. So instead of being a keeper of the peace, they were both soldiers. And I think if you really look at that, I think that's where both of them have that change, that
Mhm.
because of what it does to them. And I think the foreshadowing, if that picture, that flash where you get Vader when he's walking
Mhm.
away,
Oh, it's
that
coming.
is highlighting that war, that what that war does to Anakin as well as her.
So I would say yes, and I think they are our surrogates, or are sort of like they are showing us what every Jedi in this time period was going through,
Yep.
including Cal Kestis, including Mace Windu, Yoda himself too, even though Yoda
Mhm.
clearly throughout the prequels was like, "Oh, this feels wrong." But they were sucked into this war and went from sort of like protectors to soldiers, and then of course bringing in children, which by the way was a kind of an interesting contrast, because this episode shows up with a general scared that there's people running around, she's with her arms drawn, and then
Right.
she's like, "Oh yeah, come here kid, yeah, no, you're good." But but that said, um I will say, I just want to throw this out there because I think it's going to come back in the series. The whole reason this war was happening was intentional.
Yeah.
It was an intentional ruse on the part of Sidious
Yeah.
as the way to weaken the Jedi, and it
Yeah.
worked. And he set them perfectly up. And I think, if I'm going to take another wild shot, said this before, but I I kind of suspect that that's a little bit of what's happening with Balin, as well. But
Hmm.
I
They saw
think,
it was warping him.
yeah, I think there's something else going on with him and trying to bring back Thawne and all that stuff. But anyway, I agree with you, and I'm totally here for this notion. Like, this scene was amazing. The series of scenes was amazing, and I
Yeah.
just love how it was shot too. Like, it's simple. It's really hazy. They're probably in a room, but it gets us to focus. Like, it shows us, yes, they're in war and it's all hazy, the fog of war, literally, but it's about these characters in this war and what they're going through
Well,
and
and
what
we
they're
see
seeing. So good.
Ahsoka's compassion for
Yes.
clones. I
Mhm.
mean, that right there, a lot of the Jedi did not have
Right.
that compassion for the clones because
Yep.
they either, I guess, the only thing that I can think of is that maybe because they were clones, they didn't feel that they were worthy of the compassion.
Well, and it's funny
Because,
because here, when this is happening, Anakin is literally talking to other Jedi. I think Rex is there, battle planning, strategizing, where Ahsoka's behind caring for the troops.
yeah, and
Yeah, I
that's,
think so. I also think that's part by design with the clones. I think
yeah,
in general that's probably this part of Sidious's sort of like, plan, kind of, even though it was anyways. So his plan to kind of like desensitize both the Jedi and maybe like the galaxy to the notion of
yeah.
like, well, let's use these clones and they're using droids, like sort of dehumanizing things in general, getting numb to war. But I also think what's interesting to me is that what we're seeing here and what we saw with um, both Anakin and Ahsoka during the Clone Wars is that they got attached. And right, the idea of
Mm.
attachments to certain Jedi orthodoxy is like you don't get attached, right? And but then there was always this undercurrent in the cartoons, the Clone Wars cartoons, that like, no, the clones, like, they're individuals with, and they're part of the Force. They're clones, artificial
Yeah.
engineered life forms, but they are pretty much that, essentially it resolves in the notion that they too have lights in the Force, if you will, and
Mhm.
that they are beings, right? And so it's just the irony is it took, Ahsoka here is connecting with them, but the Jedi generals are kind of taught to, like, no, this is war. They're learning this weird extreme detachment.
Yeah. Disposable armies, like as if
Yeah.
because as if they're like droids, because droids are disposable. I
Which
mean,
I think, and
there's a huge parallel there between the droids and how they're
absolutely.
treated versus how these clones are treated, and I think that dichotomy, I think that kind of warps some of those Jedi's, that lack of, oh well, this is what they were made for. Well, no, that yeah, but that's an irrespective point. Are they being worthy of compassion and worthy of
Mhm,
these other things? And that I think this is kind of showing, and this is a plan Insidious's part. Yeah, that is cutting them off. It is making them the Jedi less than
yep.
they were, and it isn't just about necessarily the attachments, but you can see some of them got attachments.
I think it's them forgetting, it's the detachment, it's also forgetting why they're fighting,
Yeah,
which, Chris, I know you love The Last Jedi, and I think there's so much The Last Jedi in here, right? This is Rose going to, telling Finn, like, "No, dude, you're fighting for the wrong reasons. Don't just go into fight and kill yourself and die.
yeah,
Like, we fight for a reason. We fight for the people we love." And so while the Jedi of this era might be like, "Hey, don't get too attached to these guys, attachment, be careful of attachment." Like, I think Ahsoka here is recognizing, no, like, I fight for them to protect them because I care about them. Same with Sabine. I'm training Sabine. I actually suspect that she's training Sabine not just because, like, oh, she might show some force sensitivity. I think she's genuinely like, we haven't seen the whole backstory, but like, they lost Ezra. They lost so much. And I kind of felt like she saw something in Sabine and she's like, I think you need something that Jedi training maybe offered me that'll help you grieve, that'll help you move on. So I think part of that is I actually think she maybe was working with Sabine out of attachment, if you will,
mhm,
right? To help. I don't know. Anyways, we are getting ahead, but what I will say is, and you'll see me do this intentionally, is that I'm so surprised that Ahsoka is doing more, at least in my brain, to connect all of the parts of Star Wars together, including the sequel trilogy, and sort of like really highlight what I think is sort of the best part of all of them into like a larger cohesive sort of unit. But
Well, and I think that attachment that Anakin had to Ahsoka could have been the one thing that truly stopped him from
yes,
turning.
yep,
But by leaving her behind, figuratively and literally, he was
mhm.
put on a path.
Yeah. And here's the other thing is that if you think about it, the war that they were both in formative times of their lives, changed them. It's the Anakin quipping and making fun and detaching from these soldiers that are with him,
hmm,
thinking that they're disposable.
yep,
That's Vader.
Yeah.
That's the part of Vader that's prescient there. And
hmm,
when he changes in that moment, you can see that the war has warped him as much as it's made Ahsoka realize that she's a child of war.
yep,
She was trained in a war. She's only known fighting, didn't know peace. That's why she continues to fight.
And is that the lesson she's going to pass to Sabine? Is ultimately her concern. And I think it's the reason she seems so cold throughout the series at this point to her Padawan. That fear of continuing a legacy.
Yeah. Well, she's seen what happens when she's involved with someone. and I think that gives her pause.
But in midst of all that, Brick, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask in terms of, because this has been bugging me a little bit in that um, she seems to arrive. Ahsoka later arrives at the lesson that I think Luke excelled at, which again I don't want to spoil yet till we get there. But I wonder, do we know how much they've interacted,
We
Ahsoka
don't.
and
Not
Luke?
really.
Like we've seen a couple scenes, and when
Yeah.
we saw them together, it seemed like they knew each other, right?
Right. And unfortunately, it happened in Boba Fett, which, I don't know how many people were hanging around at that point.
Well, I wonder though, because I want to know. Really does matter. At least I think it matters to now the bigger narrative. How much did Luke actually tell Ahsoka about his final moments with his dad and Vader, and vice versa? How much did Ahsoka share with Luke about her time with his father?
Yeah.
Because I kind of want to know at this point who and how, like if they're arriving at the same conclusions in this lesson, this last lesson that she learns from Anakin, if they're arriving separately, or they're if these lessons are sort of informing one another. But maybe we should just continue, and I'll spill that later. It just feels
Well,
like
and
it
here's the
doesn't make
other
sense to
thing
spill
is
now.
the thing is we still don't clearly know whether or not this is really Anakin's Force ghost
Sure,
or if
sure.
this is the Force itself. I mean, it would come to her in a
A form
form
that
that she would feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
Now, in the midst of all of this, we do get a nice moment with Jason still listening. And I wanted to point this image out specifically because he is wearing his father's pauldron.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it looks a little small, but
It
yes.
does, well, maybe it's a replica, but
Sabine fashioned it for him.
right.
I think that's so cool. I love that. I love that. I love that. I didn't notice the little picture of Kanan in the Ghost until I saw it
Yeah.
on, I think, New Rockstars or something. And I think that is so cool. I love it. I love anything to kind of show us Kanan. It's a little off topic, but do you think we will get any more hints of Kanan?
I
for the
wouldn't be
series then?
surprised.
If we don't, yeah.
I thought it was also nice of Hugh Yang, just to go back for a second, to use his alias and not his given Jedi galactic name.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
Well, earlier when when Hugh Yang turned to I'm blanking on his name, Carson.
Carson Teva?
He said, "Oh, his father was a Jedi, Kanan Jarrus." He didn't go, "Who is really Caleb Dune?" And I refuse to accept any aliases.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's right. That's right. I forget that he's actually Caleb Doom. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But we do pop back to the Siege of Mandalore.
Oh,
Quick aside, I just want to say, I was complaining that I thought the actress was too young. Someone said she's 16, and I'm like, okay, I'm wrong. She's the perfect age for this. She's the right actress.
she's fantastic. You're familiar with her
I'm not.
and her work? So,
She's in a lot. She's been
have
in
you
a lot
seen
of
a little film called Infinity War? When Thanos comes onto a planet and
right,
finds
right.
a little green girl.
She was young Gamora. That's right. I saw someone say that. Yeah.
And
She's been in a
she was
couple other
recently in Barbie.
Yeah.
She was the filled with attitude teenage daughter.
Yep.
Well,
She's
and
really good. She's solid.
they did a good job of casting young actresses who could grow up to look like Rosario. So I thought that was important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and the thing is that it shows, this is kind of showing Ahsoka in that full soldier mode.
Mm-hmm.
That you can see the detachment kind of breaking there, and she's cutting up the Mandalorians, and it's an interesting thing for her. You kind of see that there's this negative growth, is what I would call it, because of what she's been through. So we're dealing with some PTSD kind of detachment there.
well, and she's not even part of the Jedi Order at this
I was
point.
going to say, Yeah, although it's a very complicated period for her, right? Because she almost didn't even want to do this, right? She kind of got pulled back into the fight. So in many
Yeah.
ways, she had removed herself from the war. And it was this really awkward thing where, her old master was like, assumed that she was going to join, come back, and she's like, but she went through with it. And yeah, and I'll be honest with you, when I saw that first uh the end of the Clone Wars, when they did the Siege of Mandalore, I didn't read her at all as being this young still for some reason in my head, but she
Yeah.
was that she was still like she would have been the equivalent of a late teenager, right? Still
Right.
younger, actually younger than Luke was, so she wasn't even 19
Yeah.
ish, right? 19, yeah. So this was really cool, and my only gripe with this is what the hell are those Mandalorians armor made of at this point?
Well,
Because
I assume it's fairly
It's
cheap
not Beskar.
Beskar.
yeah, I mean, this is like watered down Beskar because I said the same thing when I
Tinfoil.
saw the original
It's
Clone
tinfoil.
Wars.
Well, at
Come
this
on
point, they had to
now.
keep producing new armor to match whoever was in charge. We had the Mandalorians at this point.
Sure.
You
So they had a
know,
weak point at the waist, is what you're
yeah,
saying?
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
Well, they had to drill those holes for the horns, and
Well,
right.
technically, they would have weak points at the waist. They would have weak points underneath the armpit.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, poor Maul. Such a tool. Such a tool.
and I will say,
He really
someone
was.
said they thought this should have been Ashley Eckstein here, and she would have fit, my thought of what she should look like at this point. But I don't think she would have looked like the Rosario Dawson Ahsoka when she grew up. So, as fun as that would have been, I prefer this.
Have you seen people have been posting the scenes, the overlap scenes from the original Clone Wars and these scenes where they actually put in the voices from the Clone Wars?
No.
So it's Ashley Eckstein and Matt Lanter. It was odd, but still neat, but odd. Very much different character. Not like it's just her voice. Ashley Eckstein has a very light, a thinner voice,
Right.
Yeah.
and it was like, oh. And then the opposite with Hayden and Matt Lanter, because his voice is
Yeah.
very deep in the cartoons. And then it was just off-putting. But anyway, nerd stuff.
And of course, Anakin still doesn't think she's getting the lesson, so the duel begins again.
Well, in the shift in his lightsaber,
Right.
that was when you pick it up for the first time. I mean, yeah, we kind of got the hint earlier when he does that one single flash and the lightsaber changes. But this is the time that it's actually you can see that shift, and it's him attacking in that shift. It was
Yeah, I have
interesting that
my theories about the nature of who or what this is that I think, and I think it's totally up for grabs, and I think a lot of different things could work, but I would love to hear sort of so when you say like it becomes apparent, do you have a theory or like a running hypothesis of who or what this thing is? 'Cause you keep saying like, is it the Force? Is
I
it?
think it's the Force. I think it's
Uh-huh.
the mother and maybe even the father, one of those characters that they created in the Clone Wars that were
The
cartoon that
Mortis arc.
were that kind of guided the Jedi at certain points. And I think because they need her, because they obviously find her important enough to take the time to put her in the world between worlds when she's knocked off a cliff instead of just let her die. So
Hmm.
that right there says there's something different about her.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I still
I
think she's the embodiment of the daughter, but
Yeah, I could totally see that, and it totally fits and could work, especially when you think about all the stuff from the animated. In addition to Mortis, um, that the Lost season where Yoda
Yeah,
sort of like seeks out the nature of the Force and ends
yeah,
up in this place where he meets these spinning heads. Like that is a force. Like I don't know if that's a cosmic force or like something representing the cosmic force or whatever that he interacts with there. So there's definitely like this notion that the force itself and or some other agents that are not the Jedi or the Sith um, have been like trying to intervene a little bit, or maybe like, I don't know, if not intervene, maybe,
Maybe direct,
yeah,
guide.
maybe direct and offer some direction and guidance. So I could totally see that read. I could also see and kind of want it to be actually Anakin, but um it's a little iffy as to whether like how canon these books are, but for like the anniversaries of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, they've done these books called the what is it, From a Certain Point of View?
Yeah,
And they're
Yeah.
short stories.
yeah.
And in one of those, there was a short story about uh, Anakin moving through the Force and becoming a Force ghost. I want to say, or was it Obi Wan? It might have been Obi Wan. I forget. Either way, in it, there's a lot of talk about like it's this real kind of like magic surrealism kind of thing where you're moving through time and you are yourself at any given moment in time. You're like the total embodiment of yourself almost. So when I look at this, I'm like, oh, it would be actually really cool if it was Anakin. But the reality is, when you're one with the Force, um, you're kind of any version of yourself and every version of yourself at any given time.
Yeah.
And so, but some folks, I've heard some folks be frustrated with that notion because I think George at one point said, but the dark siders don't get a Force ghost. And so I get that. And like there's a sense of like, no, but he'd fully returned to the light when he became a Force ghost. But my only issue with that is that feels very binary and it doesn't seem
Yeah.
to be actually like the true lessons of
Not
the
nuanced. There's not a whole lot of nuance
yeah,
with even
because
with
my
that binary
notion
description. And it could be
because
that this is Anakin, but he's realizing that the only way to get her where he needs to get her is to show her what he can be and what she can be
yeah, I
if
mean,
she
because
continues along the path where she's at.
that's exactly where I was going because Anakin's so I always like step back and go like, what was Anakin's true contribution? What was Luke's true contribution? What was Leia's true contribution? So with Anakin, it's the fact that he was redeemed. It's the fact that he did go dark and then was pulled back. And so to deny
Mhm.
the Vader in him is to deny an important part of how he became who he was. Now, I don't think he was genuinely trying to kill her, but I think just like the Force showed Luke, made him deal with a vision in Dagobah that was very much dark and
Mhm.
dangerous and threatening, but it was a lesson. And just like Ray had a arguably dark-ish lesson in the cave that was moving towards a sense of like hopelessness and ambivalence and fear,
Mhm.
but ultimately it was an important lesson. I think Force Ghost Anakin can like, hey, I need to teach you a lesson, and that might be showing you some stuff that wasn't my best moment, but it was an important lesson. So I don't know. That's but either one, honestly, either one works. I'll go with whatever.
I think it
It's
would have
great
worked
food for thought.
better as if we had seen that switch to Vader and it stayed Vader for a while instead of it just being the flashing
But we
as he's
love the
stalking
flashing.
toward her.
The tease.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Is
I
it
think if
Vader?
he
Is
had
it
kept that
Anakin?
instead of switching back and forth, I think if they had kept it at the
Nice.
Vader, I think
Nice.
that's where I would have gone more with that. It's Anakin going to that point to push her,
I
but
mean, that's
this
their moneymaker,
comes
right?
back. It's yeah, but that's coming back to the it's I'm Anakin here. I'm telling you that I'm Anakin. Forces anyway, saying that I'm Anakin. I'm not Vader. I'm not,
Mhm.
but I'm here. But I'm here for a reason.
And I'll just do one more plug for the sequel trilogy because it all connects and it all matters, and I don't care what anyone says. It's all just Star Wars. It's done. But hey, Yoda said it, right? I mean, like we learn from our failures. If you forget your failures, you're missing some important like learning. So Anakin did forget his failure. Yeah, I was Vader. That was horrible, and you need to learn what an important lesson here.
Mhm.
And that's why I wonder, to go back to what I was saying earlier, did Luke and Ahsoka talk? Because really what you had here was um, Ahsoka facing Vader and then I can't hold it back anymore, Chris. Sorry. Refusing to fight, turning off her lightsaber and tossing it,
Hmm.
You're so
just like
close.
Luke did.
So
Just like Luke
close.
did. I know. I couldn't wait. I'm sorry.
And then here's the other
Edging.
thing is that if you think about it, this, she's already fought Vader once in real time,
That's right.
Right.
and she was saved by Ezra.
In the world
So we're
between
coming full
worlds.
circle back to that whole thing because we
Mhm.
know she was supposed to die
It's like
originally,
poetry. It rhymes. Yes.
and the Force obviously said that, hey, it's okay for Ezra to take her out of this because we have something for her later. So again, that comes back to the notion of the Force being something more than just a power. It's everything. It's around everything. It has its own will.
Binds us. Yeah.
It has its own will. It has its own, it's omnipresent and
I don't
omniscient.
know if I don't know if you intended this, but it does have its own wills.
Ah.
I see what you did there.
Well, that's it, folks. No.
On that
Waka
note,
waka.
we'll stop.
I will say, man, they did a great job with Hayden. Like all
Yes.
throughout that, I thought he looked so good throughout all the different versions of him. And a lot of people said, "Oh, he looks so smooth." I'm like, "Yeah, he does." But you know what? It's awesome. I think it's so cool to think that we got to revisit young him and then young him at periods we didn't see in live action, and we got to see Luke. Like, I don't know, as much
Well,
as
and I love that they did the red eyes, and you could see the eyes red, and
Mhm,
you could tell that that was intentional, and it was great. And the fact that we got to see him in that Clone Wars outfit, that was great too. I mean, that was
mhm.
really, it was cheesy, but it was great.
And of course, we get a little bit of that here from Ahsoka too. That moment where hate is there inside her, filling her. Her eyes have turned that Sithy yellow red.
Well, and that whole sequence where she disarms him eventually and has that to his throat. I mean, she could. This was her moment to, this was her defining moment. Is she
Yep,
going to continue to let this anger run through her and guide
yep.
her and influence everything and poison it all? Is she blaming him for, you know, all of that trauma that she endured as a child? Because if you think about it, that wasn't the normal training. That wasn't the normal Jedi way. And I can't imagine what that would do. I mean, if this is my psychologist brain, sorry, it
Do it.
if you're talking about a child who's traumatized, their brains don't develop the same way that most kids who
Mhm,
don't deal with trauma develop. So in this case, she is a traumatized child that grew up into a war that continued that war. So for most of her life, she was in war
mhm,
from the time that she was, early teenagers to now
mhm.
in the show. Almost all of that has been at war.
Yep.
And
And
what
how
that does
do
to a person is not a good thing.
and how do we in this reality help young children who experience trauma? Like, I mean, there's a lot of different ways, right? But obviously, like, there's all sorts of different ways of helping, not just the sort of the therapy to kind of like find, I don't know, to come to terms with is not the right phrase, with the trauma and move forward. But there's also like there's also techniques, a lot of them now with like mindfulness and meditation to sort of actually repair some of the pathways in the
Yeah.
brain. And I'm bringing that up because who meditates and reflects and is mindful, those are the teachings of the Jedi
Hmm.
that people forget about because it's not as cool to see the lightsabers wrecking shop. Like, that's cool. But actually, the sitting around and meditating on the Force is a huge part of the training and sort of understanding the nature of the cosmos and the universe and the connections that bind us. And I say all that because that's where I wanna go back to Sabine. Honestly, I think that's why she trained Sabine. She's like, you don't gotta train Sabine to fight. She's a
No.
Mandalorian,
Yeah.
but Sabine is exactly what you described, is her, is a
Mhm.
child
Yeah.
soldier who was raised to be a warrior, who got, like, was in the Empire and then left, and her family hated her, so, like, tons of trauma, and
Yeah.
that's where I think she was like, "Oh, you're you're like me. There are parts of this training, even though I said at one point, I am no Jedi, but there are parts of being a Jedi that were actually really helpful and important, and I
Yeah.
think we see that in here where she goes, "Nah, dude, I was trained for not just for this. There was other parts of my
Yeah.
training."
But also
And I
saying
think
that
that's
she's no Jedi is kind of her acknowledging that that whole time was
mhm,
not normal.
exactly. I think that's what it is. I think she's coming to terms with that. At one
Yeah.
point, she said, "Well, no, I'm no Jedi." And I think what she's realizing is like, "Oh, no, wait, you're not Jedi, and the parts that I was taught of Jedi," like, come uh, reconnecting with that part of her
Yeah.
identity and embracing the parts that like, no, that's the good stuff. The other stuff was a little sketchy. And again, from the point of view of the universe, and this is why I wonder how much did she actually talk with Luke and vice versa, because I want to know how much did she know that Sidious, the Sith, was involved, and that this was a dark side plot. Because if she was aware and had a little bit more of that scope, I think she would then be one of the first Jedi to arrive at the conclusion that, oh, we were fooled and we were turned into something intentionally that we were never meant to be. And I think that's what this is. This is the realization like, we were never meant to be that. I was right when I was talking to Anakin. He was wrong. I remember this conversation now. And then I'm back here going like, nah, dude, you're wrong. And your son was right. And I want to come back to this because when you said this was her moment, who else had that moment? Anakin had this
Yep.
moment with Dooku. He had his sabers around the dude's neck and he failed. He didn't do what Ahsoka did, and he didn't do what Luke did when they had this opportunity.
Yep.
They both turned off their lightsabers and threw it,
I was gonna
right?
say, how do we win, Brick?
We toss the saber, baby. That is the core of Star Wars. It
Yep.
always has been since episodes 4, 5, and 6. That's what we were leading towards. And people say, "Nah, yeah, that was episode 6." No, 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 no. That was episode 4 when Ben Kenobi did the one thing that he needed to do to make sure that this young, untrained, force sensitive son of Skywalker understood. He intentionally was standing there with his former student and decided he saw his son over there. I need to throw my lightsaber, or not throw it, but stand there,
Yeah.
not fight, get killed. I need Luke to see this. Because if I do that, if I refuse to fight and learn that lesson, I will become far more powerful than you can ever imagine. Luke did the same thing a couple episodes later, even though around Empire Strikes Back, he was so stuck on this notion of, I need to become a Jedi. So I need to go to Yoda and run around the swamp. And that's Jedi training. And Yoda was like, nah, dude, that's not the lesson. And then all of a sudden, there's this dark cave. And he grabs his lightsaber and says, Yoda tells me, you're not going to need that, or his gun. No, you're not gonna need that. But he couldn't hear the lesson because the lesson was, dude, it's the same lesson, in fact, that Yoda told Ezra in Rebels. Sometimes the way to victory is to not fight.
Yeah.
So it's there. Filoni's aware of it. We know this, and I would argue Ryan Johnson was aware of it. I would say to a certain extent J.J. Abrams was aware of it. I don't know how deeply, but if I look at how Rey became Rey and what she learns in the end from Luke and then later applies in The Rise of Skywalker. Um, she didn't go out and fight head on, right? She was trying to appeal to um, other Ben, right? She kept trying to
Yep.
appeal to him. And then I haven't actually gone back to see this, but maybe both of you have a better memory in The Rise of Skywalker. Does she not sort of refuse to fight Ben on the wreckage of the Death Star when all the water's going around? Does she turn off her lightsaber, Or am I getting that wrong?
She impales him and then immediately heals the hole.
Yeah.
It's not about the kill.
So it was an oopsie.
It was a disarm. And dude, now that I've calmed you, like, I don't know. Anyway, that's what I loved about this episode. There's so many cool things going on with her choices, what her realization. And the reason I want to believe it's Anakin, because I'm kind of unhappy with where we left Anakin a little bit. Like, I feel like yes, his son brought him back, and yes, ultimately he sided with his son and got rid of Sidious. But seeing this, and
Temporarily.
but if this is actually Anakin, he got it. He got his lesson, and I think he's contributing to the process of eventually defeating Sidious, knock on plastic, um, in The Rise of Skywalker, right? Like leading more and more people towards this hopefully new form of, or new, I guess, I don't know what, not even new form, maybe a return to what the Jedi once were. Because I know, Chris, you love Broom Boy.
I love Broom Boy.
I think that's what Broom Kid's about, man. Like,
Mhm.
it's a new Jedi order.
Well,
that,
even when Rey doesn't turn off her lightsabers to fight Palpatine, she maintains a defensive position the entire time. She doesn't strike at him.
mm-hmm.
She allows her enemy to defeat himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
While getting some encouragement from the likes of Ahsoka and Kanan and so many others.
Yes.
Aaron, you've been quiet. What are you thinking?
Oh no, I'm good. Just the whole. You're seeing all of these parallels between that journey for her as much as it was the journey for Luke and the journey really for Anakin, and we're seeing all the parallels that are coming together. And you kind of, here's the thing is that here in a second we're going to see her come out with her white cloak. Well, who else starts off as gray and comes out white? Gandalf. Very much a Gandalf moment there where you can kind of see Filoni's kind of playing with us and our expectations of color. But with that change in the color of her outfit is also a change in how she perceives the world, because you can see it that there's some joy there, there's some emotions that were not present prior to that moment that are now there.
Of course, after this moment, Anakin's eyes return to normal. The Sith drops out. And maybe he is truly redeemed, not only through his actions for his son, but if this is Anakin, and time is timey-wimey, spacey-wacy, maybe this is his true redemption, to teach this moment, to pass this on to his Padawan.
This is the legacy of the Skywalkers.
Yep.
That change, it kind of, you see it subtly happen, and it was one of those moments where you see that he's realized that she gets it.
Mm-hmm.
She now figured, he knows that she's got what's supposed to happen. And I think as a teacher, he would be feeling accomplished for that, and as a parent, because no matter what you say, I think that the Padawan master relationship, that dichotomy, is very much like a parent and a child.
Yeah.
I think that legacy is, it's the one child that he got to raise, if you know what I mean.
It's true. This was the one child that he got to raise. And really, it's like the mentorship, right? It truly is the teaching, yeah. Anyway.
And of course, we get this beautiful. Oh, go ahead, Brick.
Sorry, my brain was jumping. The only other time when I felt like he was teaching his son, oddly, is on Endor, on the moon of Endor, on that sort of like platform when he's talking to him about building his lightsaber and all that stuff. I felt like there was a moment there that I loved even as a kid. I was like, oh my God, that's his dad. and he's about to turn his son over to like his master, his Sith master. But like I felt like that's where we start to see a little bit of the conflict in Vader. So I don't know. I felt like in that moment it was like, oh man, like I could have taught you how to do this. Like I missed out, it's like I missed out on tossing the ball, like whatever it is. But yeah, that just reminded me of like, yeah, I feel like in that moment it was like maybe because of his relationship with Snips, um, that informs his meeting his younger son and is like thinking about like, oh, how did you get to this place where you're now building your own saber? And the only real point of reference that he would have would be watching Ahsoka go through her thing, because his experience was very weird with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Like that was not a normal situation. So yeah, you're right. I think he looks very fondly on this stuff, and maybe I don't know. I'm connecting it to Return of the Jedi when maybe he's reminded of that when realizing what he's missed out with Luke.
Cats in the cradle, and all that Vader.
Oh, sorry, I'm real sensitive right now. It's been a rough week, folks. Love my kids. Anyways, all 100, some of them. Anyways.
So the water rises and engulfs Ahsoka in this kind of beautiful scene. Just completely engulfs her until she is returned underwater with the light shining through. As she is literally and metaphorically found.
Yeah. It was an interesting thing because we got the Chopper found something finally. I was like, well, why didn't the big ships get this could have happened a lot sooner. But I don't think that she was physically there.
Right. I think you're right.
Where she comes out of that water in the world between worlds, I don't think she was physically there. I think it was, she was slowly put there. That's how they could find her.
And a little bit of search and rescue. This again.
Yeah, I was wondering why it was them that went into the water. That was confusing to me. I'm like, why is it the two X-wing pilots? But I assume this is the X-wing pilots that lost their planes when the hyperspace jump happened.
Well, grunt work. You never, when you're a general, you can pass that off.
Yeah, I know.
And they've got the training, yeah, that's cool. It's kind of cool to see New Republic officers kind of doing some search and rescue.
I'm going to pop out of the image share for a second so I can load up a couple more images for us.
While you're doing that, so you know that scene of her popping out of the water? I don't know how... were you guys watching Rebels when it was airing and sort of like did you like watch that and follow like Star Wars? They had like a series of post shows that they were doing.
Yes, I loved them.
Okay. Do you ever remember Dave Filoni sharing some sketches?
Yes.
And I think they became they became part of a digital card game, I think. It was sketches of her in water, supposedly escaping her fight or post the fight with Vader on Moraband. Is that right? Is that what it's called?
I want to say yes.
That
yeah.
the basically giant.
It was an M word.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because it was originally Korriban from the Knights of the Republic, Moraband.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were just like that. It was like her wading through water, and there were like ripples and reflections, and it was red, black, and white. It was gorgeous. That's just really cool. Like, because Filoni's very much like a visual person. I love his pencil sketches, and I presume that that's part of his background as an animator, like going back to like his old 2D animation stuff with like Avatar: The Last Airbender or whatever. But yeah, I remember him telling stories about like when he met George, it was just them drawing or him drawing out ideas. And so it's kind of cool to see like those old ideas come back and work their way into the actual live action depiction of Ahsoka, sort of like being reborn, if you will.
Absolutely.
fully fits with the Ahsoka the White and all that kind of stuff, and religious baptism and birth,
Yeah.
rebirth, River Nile, yada yada yada. Anyway,
And we get this scene of Jason seeing the X-Wings fly overhead. Ahsoka is rescued. Just, Also, living a little bit of that Top Gun visual life. I love it.
Yeah. Well, in the look of on his face of, I guess pride, satisfaction, that he's not crazy. Kind of, you kind of get that feeling that he's like relieved that he's not insane,
Right.
that he wasn't hearing things. You could see that.
but also that it was validated by his mother. Like literally, this powerful general was like, "No, he's right," and I think that's beautiful. And also, you mentioned Top Gun. I also went to when we saw the X-wings over the water, and then eventually the Ghost. I was reminded of The Force Awakens again, sequel connections, but
Right.
going over the water, and I was like, this is cool. Like this is, it all counts, baby.
And of course, Ahsoka awakens with a new light.
Oh, so cool.
Also, I just wanted to share this image because at first it was jarring to see the transition between her face and the lake without her little headband. Montrals. Oh, thank you.
Oh, we didn't talk Leku. I'll come back to that. But yes, it is. It was odd, right? It was like I kind of would have appreciated it a little bit more, and I feel like we saw this in the Clone Wars on a male. Oh my God, now I'm blanking. The Montrals are, what is her species? Anyways, sorry, Ahsoka. Her people. It was more of like a gradual ombre, if you will. There's like it's a hardish transition there, but either way, it was whatever. It was not the biggest deal. It's cool.
And of course, I think we get to see the Ahsoka everybody thought we would, the very open, warm Ahsoka in her interaction with Jason, thanking him for helping find her.
Well, let's call her Ahsoka the White now.
Yeah.
And we'll be good.
Do you remember what Gandalf the White was like? He definitely was a little warmer, but also very more resolute, very clear on what they needed to do. And this was that was very much what was happening with her. And damn, she's got Ahsoka's got style, man. Even as a kid, like even including the tube top. I'll put it out there, but just like she had all these cool outfits all throughout. Even just last episode, we got to see her in a cool blue space suit. A little Oompa Loompa-y, but it's just amazing to me. Like she's got outfits. Does she officially have the most outfits now?
Like probably.
Anakin. Yeah.
I mean, Luke did okay for himself.
Start making figures of her. We'll get 25 versions of Ahsoka,
and I'll buy every one of them like a clown.
I think you and I talked about this on episode 1, Chris, but there's still something a little bit about the texture that weirds me out, because in my brain I've always thought of it as like calcium, as like ions, but it's a little bit spongy, but whatever.
They move. They
do.
Sort of.
Did you notice Hera's? I want to get back to that Leku real quick. It was a little bouncy.
Yeah.
And they showed it a lot. I don't know. Do you happen to have any of those shots from behind?
Unfortunately I don't. Not outside of that.
I'm gonna put a picture in your brain.
Okay.
Imagine if you see someone in their underwear and their legs are sort of sticking out. That's what I've always actually seen from even Rebels. It's like someone's two legs sticking out of their underwear out the back of your head. Sorry. I may or may not have had my young son recreate that yesterday. But anyways, moving on.
Yeah, best I can do is this.
There. See? Sorry. Those are two legs.
Okay. I see it now. And now I can't unsee it. Thank you so much for that, break.
And then if you ever go back and watch it, those things bounce a lot in this episode.
But of course, poor Hera has some splaining to do.
Hera.
I here's the interesting thing about this. It's almost like you would think Mon Mothma would be like all for making sure that this is gone forever, but she is not. She's not having it. She's like, no, I don't care.
But even
She's
in
far away.
Rebels, she was very like kind of hesitant about actually going to war. She was like, "Oh yeah, no, 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 we will stand up for what's right." Oh no, fight and
Same with Rogue One. Sorry, but she's um she's a bureaucrat,
Yeah,
and she has a particular class perspective, and we see this in Andor. Like, she's coming
yeah,
from one of the wealthier, more powerful planets, and so she's the equivalent of, like, I don't know, like a wealthy person. Just she's, I don't want to get too far into real world politics, so I'll continue to use Lucas's allegory. She comes from one of the wealthiest central systems, and yes, she ended up on the side of the rebellion largely because of ideals, which is fair enough. That's
yeah,
right. But she was very different from, say, the people on Ryloth who were dealing with very concrete conditions. The
yeah,
people in the prisons that we saw in Andor that
yeah.
actually ended up rising up and physically fighting and like sparking this rebellion. And I tend to see, I don't look too kindly on her. I'll tell you that right now, and it pays off in the sequel trilogy. But she's important. Everyone plays a role in the rebellion, but she was the politician along with Bale, who I think were in a position to support in a particular way, and I would argue maybe sort of take advantage of
Hmm.
the many rebellions that were actually happening, whether it was Enfys Nest actually doing the dirty work, whether it was, again, Hera's dad, Chomp Syndulla, doing the dirty work, all these like people all over the planet. And then they kind of formed this rebel alliance, which we later see as with like many revolutions on the partisans, right? As we see in many revolutions, it's like you're kind of trying your best to keep a united front of people who have a shared interest, but they don't always think exactly alike.
Yeah.
And it took Jin Erso and the rest of Rogue Squadron to um, give people a moment to finally congeal and just finally take action, and that was truly the spark of the Rebel
And she's
Alliance.
kind of like our high center person.
Yeah.
She's gonna stay right in that centerpiece. She's trying too hard to avoid the things that need to be done,
Hmm.
but
Yep.
ensure that the other things that have to be done are done. And I think she plays that high center very well. I mean, and that's
Yep.
kind of, it's not exactly useful in this situation.
well, and
The
to tie
contrast.
this, I was gonna
Go
say to
for it.
tie to this to the sequels, is this maybe the inciting incident for the Resistance?
So that's where I wanted to go in terms of like the sequels and the books, particularly in
Yeah.
between Aftermath, Princess, or Leia of Alderaan. What was it? No, the blood, the one where Leia is outed as being Anakin's daughter. Um, where she was essentially going to try and be um a uh chancellor. I think she was taking a different position, but then her her competition or whatever essentially outed her as being the daughter of Vader. And so that eventually becomes how Ben finds out, which kind of sends him on his path. But unfortunately, what we find out is that Mon Mothma, in her interest in again being a little too idealist and wanting to sort of appear um, different from the Empire or whatever, she did a couple of different things, including setting up programs that would try and reform
Yeah.
Imperials, which in and of itself sounds like a great idea. But if you watch Andor, maybe not the best idea. Was it
And
Andor?
if you watch, even watch this
No,
show, I mean,
Mandalorian. Hmm.
you watch this show, I mean, that's what
Exactly.
happens to Hera at the
Yep.
docking yard.
Yeah. Like you
So,
can't
and they
just.
just ignored it. It's like,
Yep.
it's no big deal. It's only a couple. But no, that's how this stuff starts, kids.
Right.
And
Starts
it
with a
becomes
couple.
the bureaucracy returns because sadly that's the world that she knew,
Yeah.
was the large republic senate and bureaucracy, which frankly wasn't really working either.
No.
And so So what she
But if you
does is
look at the prequels, that first movie where it's the Trade Federation is blocking
Yep.
doing an embargo, basically.
Yep.
I mean, that right there should have been like the clue that, hey, this stuff doesn't really work, guys.
Yep, but it was yeah. So what ends up happening is that they quickly dismantle the military. They say, "Oh, we're not going to be." They cave to the pressure and criticism. Some of it was genuine. Some of it was by first order agents, essentially saying, "Why are you building up a big military?" So they're like, "Oh no, no, we're not." So they ended the centralized military. The New Republic forces are really thin, which is why you see Carson Teva and Mandalorian saying like, "Yo, like we're trying, we're out here, but we can't really keep the peace."
Yeah.
And that's where you do get eventually you hear her reference in this Senator Organa because she is a senator again of this
Yeah.
sort of
Mhm.
Alderaanian system. But she has heard rumors, and as Hera has, of something going on in the unknown regions. And I think, whether it's they're hearing about basically they're hearing about the birth of the First Order. And
Right.
so they start to like, no, Mon, we need to do something. And she's stuck in this bureaucratic role, including with bad actors. I still think to this day, you remember that character that I mentioned, the senator in the first episode was Kaz's dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if that show had continued, we would have found out that Kaz's dad was either intentionally or unintentionally working on behalf of the interests of the First Order to weaken the New Republic. And so there was this whole scene or this whole uh, set of tension between um, him and his dad when he found out that he was joining the resistance. He was not a fan of the resistance. But anyway, I do think I think this could be actually maybe the inciting incident to go back to what you're saying, or like one in a series of people
Many.
getting
Yeah.
disenfranchised. Like
Yeah.
I think Carson Teva splits. I think that's why he makes those offers to like Cara Dune later. Like they're looking for good people, as he says, because I think what he's actually doing in the guise of being a New Republic officer is recruiting for the resistance. So nerd.
Nerds.
I did not come here to discuss this in committee. Well, people die, Senator. Sorry. Thanks, Allison.
Allison Troy on it. And it's Ahsoka the White. Having a little chat. A little chat with the space whale.
We didn't see enough of this in live action, and I'm glad we're seeing more of it with Grogu and the Rancor and Grogu and the not Rhino Mudhorn.
Ray and the Snake.
Ray and
Yeah.
the Snake. Yep. Because we saw it with Ezra and the wolves and these other
Yeah.
those sort of alien
Lost
things.
cats and
I love this sort of part of the Force because really we're all connected, whether you're a sentient being or more of an animal. And I love that you can communicate like this. It's good stuff. Brings the mystic side again, as you were saying,
yeah.
Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah. It's to me this really parallels kind of really Ezra's interactions with the Purgil. This is
Mhm.
you can see that there's this throughput for her that ties back to that relationship that he had with him as well.
Yep. Yep.
Well, and it's to me forever interesting that Ezra's hardest thing to do was to make connections, which ended up being his strongest Force ability.
Yeah. I also wants to know if we're going to Mordor to throw Grogu into the volcano. Oh, we know at some point something's going to happen to Grogu because he's not around for the sequel trilogy.
And then Sidious's like weird, scrawny, naked body comes and bites
Yeah.
Grogu and jumps. No, sorry, take it too far.
Turns it into the zombie Grogu.
As I'm looking at this picture, I was reminded that her code name during the Rebel Alliance, and she was really like we find out that she sparked and put into action of true rebellion, right? But she did that as Fulcrum,
Yeah.
who's going around sort of like recruiting and running rebel
Right.
cells. Fulcrum being one of Anakin, I think's old code names during the Clone Wars. but fulcrum being like the tipping point, the
Yeah.
balance, right? The
Yeah.
lever. And so when I think about that name, like, is she essentially like that bridge between Anakin and Luke? That's where I go back to. Did she have a conversation with Luke that somehow, like, I don't know. I feel like I want to know a little bit more how she sort of fits into that family because, as you pointed
Yeah.
out, she was essentially raised by Luke's
Well, I think
father.
also if we're talking about that concept of fulcrum, she's kind of that piece that's she's been in both worlds.
Hmm.
So being that child of both worlds, she gets to choose which way she wants to go. So it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And I like that they changed the colors and they did all of that. And you see, it's more than just it's physical, and you can see that it's emotional because then there's more warmth. It's a real change. It's transformative,
Yep.
and that's what you hope happens when someone comes to a life realization. This again, the therapist in me would they do the work and the change happens.
But of course, we have to have some Disney synergy here. How can we tie back to a classic? By having her live in a whale. Let's travel in a whale.
Yeah.
What is it? Nostromo? No, something.
Monstro.
Or is it
Monstro.
Monstro? Sorry, I,
Monstro,
I
yeah.
mixed up Alien and Pinocchio.
Yeah, it's right. At least your nose won't grow.
Just my
Oh,
belly.
It was a little disturbing to realize how much, like, from the animation side, you wouldn't see them as being more like blue whales, but in the live action version, they look like a blue whale with, tentacles.
right.
That's pretty much. And this is more so like a blue whale because you get the
The teeth.
mouth for the plankton filter.
And again, Filoni worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender. This feels very much like an Avatar
Yeah,
animal, right? And they would
yeah,
literally call it like a whale topus or something like
right.
that
right.
in Avatar.
Right. The most devastatingly weird animal in all of Avatar was just a bear.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Just a
Yeah,
regular
that was a little
bear.
weird. Oh no, it's just the bear. Yeah.
Well, that's
Oh, this is
unfortunately
beautiful, beautiful.
all I have for the show and tell portion, which
Mhm.
took almost, an hour of itself. So much happened.
Because
Such a beautiful episode.
yep.
And that's not to say we didn't have Carson Teva trying to buy some time out in space. Doing it the easiest way possible. You're not going to believe me if I tell you.
Well, the
Yep.
thing, I thought at first he was gonna like BS her, but no, he was telling them exactly what they were doing. I was like, oh, okay, we're going that direction. I figured
Yeah,
he was
it
just gonna
is.
be like, yeah, you're not gonna believe me, and he was gonna give him some song and dance kind of thing.
It's true. I totally thought it was gonna be a Han/Poe kind of like
Yeah,
BS situation, but it was like, oh, this is cool. Like, no, there are lots of different personalities, and it's very much like a Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. Like, okay, I'll just tell you. Like,
yeah,
you're not gonna believe it. Like, I love it. It's great.
yeah,
Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, by the way, one of us, right?
yeah.
Super toy nerdy, toy
Oh yeah,
tweaker guy. I love it. He's so
yeah,
great.
yeah.
But, and I want to say, redemption for Dave the director, I felt like this episode.
Yep. I've been
But
his critic, and I absolutely think he did a great job with this episode. Yeah, no, I think it was really well done. And I gotta say, like, if it all was him, again, I don't mean to imply that it wasn't, but damn, he got some amazing performances out of some really young actors. Both Jason
mhm,
and young Ahsoka were fantastic, and we know young Ahsoka's fantastic. I've never seen young Jason in anything before, but like that, and that's a much younger kid. There was like an innocence, but also like like the whole mystical. Like I'm feeling something, and I don't know. There was some really cool stuff that Filoni was able to either pull out of this actor or not get in the way of.
yeah.
Um, So,
You know, I think the biggest thing he did with his young actors is he asked them to do very little.
Mhm.
Less is more. Don't ask them to show you everything, but give us some nice little moments.
I'd argue that kid did better than 19-year-old Luke did in A New Hope, and
You know what? Let's be honest. George couldn't direct his way out of a box. There's a reason
yeah,
why Empire is the best movie
yeah,
of the
yeah.
all of the Star Wars movies. To me, Empire Strikes Back is the best movie because it has the best director.
How could you say something so daring yet so brave?
You know,
I appreciate that because I don't think enough people recognize it. And honestly, I know that we're in an era of definitely trying to get some level of redemption for the prequels, and we should. I mean, like, as I said, just like with the sequels, it all counts. Like
you know.
it's there, but like we can look at some of
Well, look at
the
look at how
technical and
Anakin was,
directing
or
faults, and
look at how Hayden was directed in this.
yeah.
Even in Obi-Wan,
Mhm.
I
Oh,
know he
can
can
I?
act.
Yeah,
I've seen the other I Built a House or whatever that other movie was that he was did right before he
I don't know
did
that one.
Star Wars with
Hmm.
it was Kevin Kline, and it was basically a father and a son, and he's a drug addict as a kid, and it's a haunting movie. I mean, his performance in it is great.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
I Built a House or We Built a House or something. I can't remember what it was, but it came out before he took over. Did the Anakin role, and I knew he could act, but I guess George just made him stiff. I mean, he came across very stiff, and that's a George
Good
thing.
thing Kale is not here, but
Yeah.
yes.
Direction
Um,
direction means important things.
I will say, he also I don't know if it's intentional now, but there is it like every time we bring you back, Hayden, we're gonna throw you in sand. 'Cause in Kenobi, he was there, and in this one, that dude was running in the sand, and it was a little weird if you look at it back, but I was like, "Oh, man, poor Hayden's gonna, like, it's all about the sand. I hate sand. Gets everywhere."
But he's not wrong about sand. It does get everywhere.
He's
And you
100%
know what?
right. Sorry, but that doesn't work with the ladies, at least, I don't know.
It's the worst part of the beach. Is all of it.
I don't
Yeah, but
know.
it's
The water can occasionally be the worst part of the beach, depending
but
on what's blooming.
I agree that Dave Filoni did a really solid job, and I just want to say that again because I'm not like a just by default Dave Filoni hater, and I'm not even a Dave Filoni hater. I'm a hater at the reification of from some of the fandom stuff. I just feel like I want to go and just say repeatedly whenever I'm doing Star Wars stuff, it's like one, it all counts. Let's just look at the story as it's told and try and see the connections because I do think they all do follow um, the sort of path laid down by George Lucas, crappy directing and all. Um, but and I think this, I think this show in particular, as I've tried to kind of like make these connections between the whole toss a saber thing and what true balance in the force means and what the nature of
Yeah,
the force is. I think that was all there. I just think now it's almost like, yeah, we do have to make it really explicit. I feel like that's what
yeah,
sort of they're doing with the show. Like, no, let's make it real clear and explicit. Like, we're good. Star Wars is good. Look, it all makes sense. And what I'm really excited about is that this is ahead of, we know that Rey's coming back and we're
yeah.
going to see stuff later. So this is all going to hopefully inform that. Right. And you better be wrong about Hu Yang, man, because it'd be great to see Hu
You
Yang
know what?
chilling with
I
Rey.
hope I am, but I don't have faith that that's not going to happen.
I see the foreshadowing too now, yeah, but we'll
It's one of
see.
those things that they do.
He's gonna roll up as a head in a bubble and just be like criticizing Ray's construction. Like, that's
Yeah.
not how we do it.
We need to stop killing the robots that we love. Stop it.
Think of the robots.
So I'm curious, we saw this big moment and she got a lesson from her master, and an important one. It seems like she's on a new path. So I think we are heading towards the climax and resolution. So What is the climax and resolution, do you all think?
Oh man, this is something that is exciting to me because I can't fathom where we're going now. It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is fun.
it's very exciting because I could throw anything I want on the wall, and it probably has a 0% chance of being right.
I don't think we're going. I think we're going to see probably Ezra come.
Yeah.
We're going to get a good chunk of Ezra for at least an episode, I think, or at least part of an episode, because at some point they're going to have to give us, hey, what's he been doing? What's Thrawn been doing? We're going to have to get that backstory, that because otherwise that just makes them, yeah, we had the backstory from Rebels, but we don't have the backstory for the last 20 years.
Mhm.
Are
Mhm.
we
Because
just
that's
we're
roughly how
gonna?
long they've been gone. Is about 20 years,
It's
25 years.
I assumed it was a decade
Which was a decade.
from when they took off and where we are right now is a
So they're saying
decade.
it's a decade?
Yeah.
See, because
Well,
Ahsoka seems like she was aged so much for that.
Rebels, that finale, before it does its time jump to after Return of the Jedi, it ends like, where are we in the Galactic Civil War?
Yeah.
That was the after Rebels when we see Sabine hanging out at the mural is after Jedi because she references Rex even
mural.
fought in the Battle of Endor.
Yeah. No, I mean before that, before it does the time
Yeah.
jump, when they get pulled into by the Perul.
It was 1 year BBY.
Oh, so we hadn't even happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. So we're
It's
talking
not 30. Yeah.
So maybe 10 to 15. Somewhere in there. That seems like an awful lot of age on Ahsoka, though, because she's only. But then again, it could also be that what she was doing was aging her.
Right. There's nothing to say that hanging out as a secret agent and hiding in caves on Sith planets and doing those things
Yeah.
aren't hard on the scan.
Well, no, I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying, as far as you're talking about, she would be, if that case, she would be 30 something, right?
Well, if we're gonna go by the actress's age, at the Siege of Mandalore, she is 16, and then we're gonna get to her meeting Ezra, who is 15 going on 16. So she would be about 30, 29, 30, about that point. And now,
Okay,
10 years, 40.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Now that's okay. I
And
was
I
confused
started
when
doing this because I was typing, about to look it up, and then it clicked. Togruta. That's the
Okay.
species. And I was gonna say I don't know how Togruta age either, compared to
Right.
humans or whatever the people in a
It's
galaxy
an
far away are.
interesting thing, but I mean, we need to see that gap. I want to see what happens, because honestly, he's trapped in there with him when they're going. So we know that more than likely he's probably was a prisoner, at least for part of that, right?
Here's an interesting thought. What if they get there and Ezra and Thrawn are brothers in arms?
Best buds.
And that would be creepy. I mean, truthfully.
Well, here's the thing. I'm stuck a little bit with Thrawn. First, like, if you just know Thrawn from Heir to the Empire, you know a version of Thrawn that is kind of faithful to what they brought back, but also not, because they did a
What?
series of books about Thrawn, the Chiss
Yeah.
Ascendancy, and he does have similar beats in his life from the original, but I don't get the same sense because they introduce him at a different point. In Heir to the
Yeah.
Empire, he was introduced after Return of the Jedi,
Yeah.
and there's more of like, ooh, it's Grand Admiral Thrawn, and there's this like reputation. But we actually meet him pretty early in his career, um, when he first joins the Empire, sort of joins the Empire with kind of dual allegiances to both the Chiss Ascendancy and the Empire. Um, and yes, there's a little bit of the stuff from the old EU where like he wasn't quite accepted by the somewhat xenophobic empire, but also
Yeah.
just they kind of shifted that a little. It was partially the fact that he was non-human or whatever, but also that he is doesn't understand how to play the political game is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't understand who to kiss ass to or whatever, and that's what gets him in trouble. But it's his intelligence and his skill that always sort of like wins the day. But it was weird when we got to him in Rebels, I was just never convinced that he was that much of a threat. Like he kind of at the end of the day, he didn't do a good job against this tiny little band of like rebels.
Yeah. Well,
And
it made him look from being super confident and
Mhm.
capable and dangerous. It made him kind of seem like a screw up. I mean,
A little bit. And also it's hard not to when like again, Heir to the Empire came out at a time when Star Wars was finished.
yeah,
So they were trying to create what came after. So that means Darth Vader was out of the picture. The Emperor was out of the picture, sort of.
sort of.
Um, they needed to create somebody that was a big threat. But
Yeah,
in this new incarnation, he was around, and we get to introduce to him while the Emperor's around and while
yeah,
Vader's around. So you can't make him look too badass. Um, so I'm just a little stuck on what we're getting, like, because again, this notion that he's going to come back and take over the Empire and be the heir to the Empire feels weird to me because the whole reason he joined the Empire to begin with is kind of like he had an agreement with the Emperor that like, yeah, I'll serve you, but it's mainly because I want to hopefully get you to help me help my people in the unknown regions, sort of thing.
yeah.
And so
Well,
there was
and
this little bit of a benevolence and like anti-hero y kind of thing to him.
and there's always a chance that he's not the one pulling to be the heir to the empire.
Yes,
You know,
Yeah,
exactly. That's where I'm leaning.
yeah.
Do
so
you have a
there's
sense of who is, or do you have an idea?
no.
Okay. I have a dumb idea that I thought of today that actually in the grand scheme of things. So again, if their interest here is to make it all work, despite the stupid sorry. Despite the rumors that I hear from people or the people want to see it happen that this is all a brilliant effort to split off from the sequel trilogy and create a whole other thing. Okay. So like if I instead operate on the premise that I've been sharing here is that it's making it all work together,
Hmm.
including um like who
It
is
it
calling
gives
who's
them a
calling the
cheap out
shots?
though. It does. I mean, the world between worlds automatically gives them a cheap out.
It could,
Time travel, timey wimey. That's when you start getting you
but
get the
would Dave
easy out if you want
Filoni, the chosen one of George Lucas, undo George Lucas's premise, which is, I
it. Yeah,
believe,
yeah,
what we ultimately did get even in the sequel trilogy, in that the big bad is Sidious. I'm
yeah,
sorry, but like I had to accept that, with the prequels, which I wasn't a big fan of, but like that starts off with the notion of a phantom menace,
yeah,
this like unseen threat, and it's Palpatine and the dark side. Sorry, Sidious and the dark side. And so to me, it always made sense that it would be Sidious at the end. Maybe it was a little inelegant that somehow Palpatine returned, but if he truly was playing 3D chess this whole time, even after death, and so why wouldn't this whole thing just be part of his orchestration? And why wouldn't so that's where I get to Balin a little bit because I was um I was thinking that Balin and Shinhati were very much projected in that first episode as weird contrasting analogs to Sidious and Maul. There were a lot of shots of
hmm
Shin as Maul. There was a lot of notion of like the master and the apprentice. And then there was also comparison to them
and
as
she had her Padawan
Qui-Gon and
tail too.
Obi-Wan.
She still
Yeah,
had the
and
Padawan tail, so
the
she,
braid.
there's yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So they've made a big deal of their sabers aren't red, so they're not Sith. And then I was gonna say they also very much wanted to remind us not just of Sidious and Maul, but also of Qui-Gon and
Yeah.
Obi-Wan in that first
Yeah.
episode. So it's this weird blend. And in my brain, where I've been going is like, what if Balin is trying to be like a Palpatine? And because he says, Shin asks him what happens when Thrawn returns, and he makes it seem like he's got this other plan that doesn't seem to involve either Thrawn or Elsbeth. He's like, well, for a lot of people, it's going to be in war, but for others, it's going to be a new beginning. And for us, it's going to be more power than you can ever imagine. And to me, that's like him saying, well, it's it's a necessary evil. We're going to have to bring war back here. It seems like he's trying to manipulate, like, let's bring back this warlord,
Mhm.
and then someone will magically save the universe and become powerful. So in my brain, it was like, is this dude trying to be the quote unquote light-ish side version of Sidious? Like, I'm going to orchestrate these forces like
Yeah.
Palpatine or Sidious did with the Clone Wars to get rise to power. Is he like,
Mhm.
well, this is what the universe needs. They need a bad guy. We're going to come. We're going to get strong again because Mon Mothma and them are weakening the rebels. They're not going to fight anymore. So this is what we're going to need. So that's where my brain was for the longest time.
Well,
And
no,
then
it's not. I don't think you're wrong that that's a possibility. I also think that he could be the one that starts the First Order.
well, that's so it could be that, or that's where today I said that what I said was a silly idea and maybe not so silly. Palpatine's still around.
Yeah.
Right.
Why wouldn't Palpatine actually see that there's this bailing guy and go like, oh, okay, yeah, no, let's let this guy run with this and um sow this chaos, bring back Thrawn, and he'll try and do his thing, but I'll defeat him. He's gonna be out of the picture.
Yeah.
And then that's gonna create chaos, and it's gonna be perfect for a first order to arise, and then perfect for the Sith. Like, like what if there is that? What if he is maybe the Knights of Ren, right? That
Yeah.
we know eventually just become tools of Palpatine and the Sith anyway. So I don't know. I just to me that there is, even though I thought it was silly, there's part of it that would fit in the larger story that George set up, and that Palpatine was the big problem. He never, like he truly was was the mastermind. And so I don't know if, in Lucas's head Palpatine was truly dead, but it felt like to me there was it rhymed that Rey eventually was somehow related to a Palpatine, and then there was that Palpatine was sort of pulling the strings. I would have preferred it to be something else, but if I'm just accepting the story at hand, to me, it would be really weird to all of a sudden, like I said earlier, it would be weird to have Thrawn be more badass than Vader. I think it would be weird to have Balin or Thrawn or anybody else be more badass than Sidious.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just shooting my shots, and we'll see how wrong we are in a couple of episodes.
Oh,
3 left. We'll figure out where it goes from there. I'm just hoping we don't get like a weird filler episode where it's like something unrelated, like we get,
Mando and
Mandalorian
Grogu
season
chilling.
4. Yeah.
we get a bottle
Let the
episode for an 8-episode series.
Boba Fett in a bar.
We're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna revisit where we've been for a whole episode before we
Well,
go.
I mean, it's kind of been the thing for all of the series. They've all had that one episode that was just made no damn sense why it was there.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's really weird. Well, I don't know. At the end of the day, man, like here we are again, like talking Star Wars, and it's not
Yeah.
just what I'm appreciating about this show in particular is it's not just I don't know. Even with the Mandalorian, there's a little bit too much of that. Oh, isn't the Mandalorian great? It's like the best Star Wars, as if it's sort of like it's the best Star Wars. No, like it's Star Wars, and it's all Star Wars. Like like people have their camps or whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess in my brain, I really do want it to all work together because I like Star Wars. I mean, I'm the dude who watched Resistance. I'm the one who reads all these like the High Republic when there were a lot of like High Republic haters, but it's like, no, I kind of want to see, and like it or not, there are people who are running the show, regardless if you like them or not. Like, it's not me.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of this stuff, and I think it's really exciting. I think there's a lot of there's a lot to be said about the what this show has accomplished, like taking animation to live action, taking a first like non-human lead and carrying that in a live action thing. That's cool. Like
Yeah.
we're looking at these people and just accepting like, oh yeah, she's got foamy head horns on her head. Sure. That's awesome. That's what
Yeah.
Star Wars does. Right? We bought the cantina as kids, and people are now buying that there's a space wizard who
Yeah.
goes to weird realms, meets dead people, and comes out with her foamy, whatever. Like that's Star Wars, man. That's the right there. That's the shiz.
Well, guys, I think it's getting late. So I think we should give Aaron a chance here to tell us what he's up to.
Oh, well, I have a show tomorrow night. I will be talking with Casey Wheeler from Podcast from the Pit. He was supposed to be on my show the first, but since I had the deathly disease of COVID, so I didn't have a show that week, but I'll have that. And then more than likely, I will probably show up on Saturday for Oz's Live. I usually come in because I got some stuff that I got to open. I got at some point I have to do it because I just can't. My wife is threatening bodily harm if I keep leaving the toys out. So
I don't know. I just enjoy being Ed McMahon on that thing, just sitting to the side like, yes, sir.
But that's pretty much all I got. I mean, I'm sure I'll be doing some more 90-second reviews. I've got a couple figures that I want to do some 90-second reviews on. So other than
Any
that, I don't got
customs that
anything else.
you're neck deep in right now?
Just my diorama for his tank, but I got this, which is gonna be,
You printed that?
yeah, it's 2 pieces,
Nice.
but it's gonna end up being like a defense tower on the top of the second dio.
Wow.
So I've got a few things that I'm working on, and then these are Mindbender's Lair.
Very cool.
They're gonna be the tanks for Serpentor from the cartoon.
Oh, like what? Like Genghis Khan's
Yeah,
DNA
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got going on right now. And, yeah,
Oh, is that all?
normal insanity, I gotta have 25 things. Oh, and then next week I've got Tony's Figs coming on. We're gonna be working on a customs. I've
Nice.
got some of my stuff in that I'm gonna be doing the customs with. So yeah.
Very cool.
Brick, what are you doing?
Pretty much the thing that I've been doing, which is my shorts, the turnarounds of figures, pretty much every day. Not sure if it's Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, but there's a lot of them. And then every Sunday, 4:30 to 5:45 ish Pacific time, kind of in that sweet spot between Skelevator before and then GDL, Just Shelve It, and Hella Dope after. Um, been doing the Brick Something News this week. The co-host is going to be from Fig Bunker channel, Berserk 69. It's also part of Toy Migos. So that's cool. I'm just having fun bringing lots of different people on, and they're showing me all sorts of different stuff and
I saw
just
it was
talking
about the
toys.
Berserk figures, so
Yep. And so in perfect fashion, Berserk and
yeah.
a lot of cool imports. And so so those are the two main things. And I'm so late on some AWOC talk. Sorry, folks. But editing is not my friend. But yeah, I need to get that episode out. Um, but maybe it's for the best. At least that's what I'm putting out there because we're running out of comic book issues. Hopefully issue 5 comes out soon. But yeah, those are the main things. And then I've got stuff to, share at some point. I'll maybe do some unboxings. But I will say I think 9 away from 500, which is
Nice.
Nice.
which is cool. And so I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I know I'm supposed to do something to celebrate. But I'm gonna figure that out. I would love to do some giveaways. I would just love to kind of celebrate it. It's cool. it's been a lot of fun, and so I will have to figure that out.
Okay,
Oh, and
I
I think
think
go
it's a
ahead.
good thing that I'm enjoying the news stuff, so I'm glad you brought it back. So
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that they
scratches
gave me
that
like a
weird esoteric stuff. So
yeah, and I was able to get a regular sort of rhythm out of it too, and it basically created a way to like have people on. So come on, I'm going to start in the schedules, and I will be reaching out. And I think the last thing I'll say is that Oz and I are trying to go back and do maybe some smaller Legion's Lounge. Sorry, Legion's Lair. Sorry, Legion's Lounge is great. Whole other show. But Legion's Class. Oh my God, I said Legion's Lair. Legion's Class. Sort of smaller edits, what we're calling like maybe Cliff Notes kind of thing that we might sort of collaborate on. So there's a couple of different things. Anyway, that's a lot. But thank you for having me on Talking Tano, man. I love this. If you can't tell, like, I'm sorry if I kept going on about some weird Star Wars stuff, but man, I've been texting people paragraphs about like the Force and stuff. So
well,
thank you for the
when he
outlet.
said, do you want Brick to come?" I was like, "Yeah, hell, I love Brick. Let him come on. We'll talk this out."
My problem is I try to save all of it for this. So like I'm a crazy person for one full day. Just like don't share. Must keep thoughts mine.
And it's been great seeing it. And I love that you're bringing on all sorts of folks on. It's just that's the thing, man. It's really refreshing to just like hear different people's perspectives. And I loved seeing you and your partner on here. It's like, oh, it's super cute. So I don't think I could ever convince mine to ever do anything like this. So
Well, she will be back.
awesome. Awesome.
But I'm gonna give myself the focus to say if you've made it this far, please comment on the video if you haven't. Subscribe, like it. I don't ask you guys this enough. That would be great. Next week, I'm excited to be joined by none other than Allison Troy, the Retro Toy Princess.
Nice.
And if you want to see these guys, the links are down in the description. And I will have a link to Payne's toy sample at the end of this video if you're catching it on replay. So thank you guys for spending nearly 2 hours with us tonight. That's kind of crazy. And I was worried we wouldn't have enough time. And I still feel like we could do another 2 hours if we really, really wanted to.
Well, we could do what we did last time and re-record it.
That's right. We're going again.
Good times. Good times.
Anyway, Aaron, thank you. Brick, thank you guys. I can't wait to catch you guys in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Toss the sabers.